In this video, I give you my review of the Hercules DJControl Inpulse 300. Find out what I think about this controller coming out. Thank you for watching PDot TV, where you'll find tips, tricks, and tutorials for DJs and music performers. Now let's get into the video. So here we have the new Hercules DJControl Inpulse 300. Now in my unboxing video, I stated that, I like the form factor of this, I like the size of it. It kind of reminds me of a middle ground between the Pioneer SB and SR2. As if you're familiar with those other two Serato DJ controllers, it's somewhere in the middle of those two form factors. Now the layout of it is a little bit more similar to the SB2 with the more simple, effects controls and just a little less going on here, which is really good for beginners because you don't need to be, confused by all the extra controls that users might find useful in an SR2 once they get to that point. Regardless of that, this has a lot of controls on it and pretty much everything you need to start learning how to DJ. Now I'll just go ahead and go through the layout once again of this controller. So we'll start with the deck section. Here at the top, we have our simple effect controls, which are on-off button, your effect, one effect parameter control, and then one dry wet for all the effects. Now the DG software does allow you to run 3 effects at once per side, but you only get to control the first slot. So with this controller, so that's one thing to keep in mind, that you really only want to have the actual effect that you're going to be using the most on this control right here, so the first slot, because unless you're going to be on the mouse changing the amount on that effect, this is the only one you have control of on the hardware. Now second, we have a nice jog wheel. It has some pretty tight tension. I mean, unless you're doing a lot of scratching and a lot of pullbacks, this is really good, especially the way this controller is laid out with this beat align function and the beat match guide. It's good to have a little bit more tension because it makes it a little bit easier to go ahead and control and get that beat match right, especially when you're beginning. It makes it quite a bit easier to get this dialed in and get it right and get the feel of beat matching using jog wheels. So I like that tension on this. I mean, it's not the best for scratching like I mentioned, but for what this controller is built for, which is pretty much for the beginners out there, it's a pretty good choice having it at a tighter tension. Now let's look at the controls around the jog wheel. Here we have the vinyl mode. So just like any other controller CDJ, vinyl mode meaning if I have a track playing and I put my hand on the top, the track will stop. And then if I want to pitch bend, I use the side of the jog wheel. Now with vinyl mode off, the top of the jog wheel no longer stops the track and I can just use the top to pitch bend. So depending on the kind of DJ you are, maybe you want to just use this to go ahead and do your pitch bending if you're not going to be doing a lot of scratching and cutting. So having that option on the controller is pretty nice. Now we have looping controls here. We have loop in, loop out. And then a long press on the in will give you an automatic 4-bar loop. So here underneath the vinyl button, we have our looping controls. So we have a loop in and loop out. And then also a long press on the in button will give you an automatic 4-beat loop, which is nice. And if you need a longer loop length, you can go ahead and change that in the software as well by, using your mouse and keyboard to handle that. But a 4-bar loop at buttons press is pretty good, especially for beginners out there that aren't going to be using looping as much per se, in my opinion. It's nice to just have that option right here. Then on this side, we have our slip controls, which if you don't know what slip mode is, basically, if I go ahead and cue up the song again and play it from the beginning, let me turn vinyl mode back on. And then I begin scratching. The beats, starts off right where I let the record go. But if I go ahead and cue that back up and turn slip mode on, notice the song will keep playing. Like I, never touched the jog wheel. So just like a loop roll, it'll just continue playing on. But you can still get control over it, which is nice, especially if you're just kind of learning to scratch and you want to kind of get some, quick cuts in, but you're worried about letting it go on time. If you have slip mode enabled and you play the song, it's always gonna let go right on beat. So cool little function. There's some more advanced things you can do with slip mode as well, but that's probably what I think most beginners are gonna do is if they want to get some quick cuts in, but don't want to worry about letting it go off beat. Slip mode's a nice option. Now right here we have this button, which is Q, which stands for quantize. So you can quantize your, all the functions, especially your hot cues. So if you want to make sure you're hitting those hot cues on time, this will definitely help out as well. Now we'll go down to this lower section right here, which is the pad section. First up, we have a shift button. So notice a lot of these controls have different shift functions, such as right here under sync, you have your master, and then right under Q, you have your, bring the track back to the beginning. And then across the top here, we have hot cue, roll, slicer, and sampler. Then under that, we have tone play, FX, slicer loop, and beat jump. And it's really nice to have, more than just these one functions per button. And I'm a big fan of using the beat jump as well and things like that. So having control over that all in this controller is really nice. Now down to these pads. As I mentioned in my unboxing, they're rubbery, but you can hear they have a nice click to them. In my previous video, I said they kind of remind me of the Novation Dicer pads, where, it's not like a MPC style pad, but it has a satisfying click, so you're hitting the cue point, which is really nice, especially starting out that, you might not have the 100% DJ coordination. So to get that satisfying click and that sound, knowing, you're hitting the cue point on time is a plus. Now after that, we have this right here, which is your tempo adjustment or your tempo slider or pitch adjustment. And this is pretty much a normal size for a budget controller. It's not really that long, but it'll get the job done, especially if you're manually beat matching. And what's really cool about this is this beat align and beat match guide, which I talked about earlier. So you see lights right here. If I put it at 0, it'll light up. And then if I play a song on this side, so I have a song going, I'll change the tempo on that to make it maybe 133. Notice this light lights up right here. And then if I move it down, oh, I went too far. Now it's saying go that way until I get it right there. Let's see, can I grab it? Bang. Pretty much right there. Oh, there you go. Now I know it's pretty much beat match and they're really close in tempo. So that's really cool that they have these guides right here. And then also if I start that again, go back up here to these beat match guide lights. Now I know I have to nudge it that way. Or again, if I move it too far, now I know I have to nudge it this way. So getting that can kind of control and getting those visual cues on here, as well as in the software, really key, especially if you want to learn how to beat match, manually. Having some type of guide to kind of tell you which way to nudge the record, really helpful, especially starting out. And I know a lot of people out there that just are starting to learn how to DJ. Getting used to just looking at the screen is one thing, but getting the overall feel for it and getting used to looking down at the hardware you're playing on is a little bit harder because you're stuck at looking at the screen to make sure your beat matching is correct. But having this on here will have beginner DJs start to focus on this first, which I think is really important, especially just to get away from staring at that laptop. Once you get in front of crowds and stuff, you don't want to be stuck staring at your computer the whole time, look like you're checking email. Get used to looking down to here, looking like you're really working, and then also looking at the crowd to see, are your track selections right and are you doing really well in the mix? So that's a big plus, and probably my favorite feature of this controller is the beat match guide and the way that this controller really helps you to learn how to not only beat match correctly, but give you those visual cues on how to line things up, and also just to get you away from staring at your computer as much. Now let's go to the mixer section right here. So we'll start at the top. Here we have your browse knob, and just like any other browse knob on any other controller, it'll help you, browse through your songs. You have load buttons right here. Then you have gain, your EQ with high, mid, low. Now one thing about these, they are not full kill, which is kind of surprising for a controller and the software. They do a pretty good job. If you're used to EQ that's not full kill, it's okay. I kind of prefer a full kill on a controller, but I mean, hey, if you're just starting out, good enough EQ to get you started and get you using these and getting an idea of how these work and how you can use these in the mix. Next, we have our filter, a nice dual pole filter. So you have your high pass this way, low pass this way. So let's give that a listen. Now it doesn't have a lot of resonance, which is kind of nice. It's kind of like the way I like my filter to sound. I don't like that screeching and squealing you get on something like the Pioneer filter too much. This is a lot more usable if you're just using this to kind of cut out the bass. I know a lot of beginner DJs out there that like using this more than having to mess with the EQs just because it's on one knob. So having a more flat filter is a good thing in my opinion. So props there to Hercules. Then right here in the middle, we have our, volume control section. So we have our master volume right here, as well as headphone volume. Then these three buttons right here are your queuing section. So you can queue deck 1, you can queue deck 2, and then you can queue the master. Now again, just like on the other controllers from Hercules that I've reviewed, you don't have the ability to mix between the queue and the master. You can kind of just pick one or the other. So I wish there was the ability to mix, just like you see on any other Pioneer controller or on most DJ mixers out there, but at least you have the ability to go back and forth between the two, which is nice. And it's not just just a regular headphone cue, so you do have the ability to just mix in your headphones. So if you just had this and your laptop and a pair of headphones, you could at least practice and practice correctly. Now right here underneath that, we have the beat match guide button. So if we go ahead and turn this off, these lights stop functioning as beat match. And then notice here, the only light that kind of comes up is if I return this to perfect 0, the green lights up. So if you don't need the beat match guide and you don't want those lights bugging you, you can turn that on and off here. Then we have our volume faders, pretty standard. And then we have our crossfader. Now the cut-in time on this is pretty similar to the Starlight's cut-in time. So if you're more of a scratch DJ, let me bring this volume up. It's kind of a soft curve. And kind of a long cut-in. So if you're gonna wanna cut and scratch, this might not be the controller for you. I mean, you can do some simple scratches, but you're not gonna be able to do really complicated stuff, really clean clicks. But I would say it's decent enough to at least start with something like that. Then besides the controls right here, the rest of the unit's pretty bare bones. You have your headphone input right here in the front, then your USB to your computer right here, and then RCAs is your one output, and that's pretty much it. Now, that being said, this controller, just like the Pioneer SB2, is pretty much all you would need as a beginner. And overall, the build quality to me is very similar to the SB2. So something like this, for this price, pretty on par as far as quality goes. It doesn't feel like this is gonna break anytime soon. I've kind of been playing with this for a while now and never ran into any issues thus far. I like the way that the jog wheels feel. I like the way that the faders feel, the way that the knobs feel. Everything feels pretty sturdy. So if you're thinking about getting this as your first and only piece of gear just to start out, this, as far as build quality is concerned, isn't that bad of a choice. Now, the one thing Hercules does is they use their own proprietary software for most of their controllers, and this one's no different. So this uses their DJuice software, a little bit more virtual DJ than it is Serato DJ Pro as far as the way it looks. It's pretty kind of busy on the screen. It's not the cleanest looking piece of software, but it does have enough tools to get the job done. And especially if you're just starting out, you can get mixing down. You can get started. You can start learning how to beat match. You can start learning how to use effects, get the ideas and just the overall mechanics of DJing using this piece of hardware and the DJuice software. Now, it doesn't sound bad either. So if I go ahead and play the song, you can hear there, I have actual key lock on. So you hear a little bit of artifacts when I slow it down pretty far, but nothing too crazy. Now, right now I have the actual pitch fader set to 33%, which is pretty far to actually move the fader. So if you're just starting to hear a little bit of artifacts that slow, if I go ahead and change that percentage in the software to say something more reasonable, like to +10. To my ears, that sounds pretty good. It's not the worst key lock I've heard. And I'd say that most people are going to be satisfied with the way that feels and the way that sounds. So pretty good there. As far as the effects go, one of my favorite effects is actually probably the fade to gray, which is a really cool one, especially for doing transitions. So let me give you an idea of how that sounds. So we'll start the track, we'll turn the effect on, then we'll start turning it up. And it just kind of fades the track out using kind of a delay with a filter. And what's really cool about that is, if you notice, the effects are post fader. So just like you would use on something like a bigger setup, like a Pioneer DJM CDJ setup, still get those nice post fader effects in a really budget controller, just like this one. Now, as we talk about the software, you get the ability to go through your library, and then you get the ability to do things like go through your iTunes and things like that, and really add tracks in using that way. So you can organize your music in the actual software itself, or you can organize your music using iTunes, just like I usually do for any other DJ software, which is really nice. So if I went in and just clicked on iTunes, I could use the same organization system that I used before with this software as well. So I don't have to go back and double up my playlist and reorganize everything. But the one thing I will say is that, just like any other DJ software, when you put a song in, you're gonna have to analyze the songs. And unfortunately, DJuice isn't a piece of software that's supported by something like Record Buddy 2, where I can just organize my music and beat grid everything once and have everything roll through all the other DJ softwares. DJuice is kind of its own thing. Now, the analyzation for DJuice doesn't really take that long, and it does a decent job of getting the beat grids correct, but you might have to go through and edit those beat grids, but that process isn't that hard. Now, overall, now that I've had a little bit more time to spend in DJuice, I didn't have that great of a review of it the first time I used it with the P32, just because I thought the way that the P32 kind of functioned with no jog wheels just kind of didn't work for me in the way that I want to DJ, or learn how to DJ. But DJuice just felt a lot better using a controller like this. It might just be because this is how I'm used to DJing, with jog wheels and being able to pitch bend different amounts depending on how long I'm throwing the jog wheel, or being able to scratch, things like that. But this just felt way more comfortable, and DJuice just felt way more usable using a controller like this. So what do I really think of the Hercules DJControl Inpulse 300? Well, overall, I would say, for anybody out there that's gonna ask me, oh, what controller do you think I should get if I'm trying to learn how to DJ? This might be on my list for suggestions. This is actually probably going to be near the top of my list for suggestions if you're really interested in learning the mechanics of DJing and learning how to manually beat match. The fact that this has that beat match guide and it has those visual cues right here on the controller is something that you don't see on controllers for other softwares such as Rekordbox DJ, Serato DJ Pro, or Traktor Pro. And for a beginner that's really interested in learning how to get the mechanics right of DJing and things that are going to translate so when you make it and to those other higher end pieces of gear all the way up to the industry standard hardware, the mechanics that you learn on this and the things that this will teach you visually as well as audibly will translate and are going to be so important once you make that jump. So if you're just starting out with DJing, or you're really interested in learning how to DJ and you want to learn the manual way to DJ and really get in there and beat match manually and get those mixes really tight, this is a great learning tool, and I wholeheartedly would recommend this to anybody out there that wants to learn how to DJ. Now, as far as other people out there that already have a controller, already know how to DJ, maybe they know how to manually beat match and all of that, this might not be my choice. For this price, you could get something that uses a more well-known software and a more kind of industry standard software such as Rekordbox DJ or Serato DJ Pro, and it might behoove you to go with that software and that controller if you're already kind of got the basics down. And that limitation is really because of the DJuice software, because with those platforms, that library can kind of transfer with you to other pieces of gear along the way, where DJuice is really just for Hercules hardware. But if we're just talking from a hardware standpoint, the build of this thing and the way it's laid out and just the overall quality of the actual hardware and controller itself is right on par with those controllers for those other softwares. So to me, it really breaks down to, Are you a brand new DJ that wants to learn how to manually beat match? Or are you a DJ that, knows how to beat match and is just looking for a smaller compact piece of gear? Those two things would make me give you different answers. If you're that beginner or person that really wants to learn how to DJ, I'd say go with the Hercules Impulse 300. If you're a DJ that's just looking for another smaller, more compact controller, I would say probably stay away from this, and that's not really the market that this controller is built for. But overall, if you think about who this controller is for and the build quality of it and the software that comes with it, it's a great package for learning how to DJ, and this would be a great first controller for someone that really has never stepped in front of any DJ gear and really wants to learn. So that's my review of the Hercules DJControl Inpulse 300. So question of the day, what is your favorite feature of this controller? Go and leave that down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And as always, if you found this video useful, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, go ahead and click right here to subscribe to this channel. Or if you'd like to watch more content, go ahead and click on that video right there. And thank you for watching PDot TV, where you'll find tips, tricks, and tutorials for DJs and music performers. See you next time.